Welcome to University Drive, your pathway to the transformational work of University of the Bahamas. Our mission is to advance and expand access to higher education, promote academic freedom, drive national development, and build character through teaching, learning, research, scholarship, and service. Our goal is to build a better Bahamas by shaping tomorrow's leaders today, finding solutions to challenges, and forging new opportunities for growth. University Drive, where faculty, staff, students, and alumni travel the road of progress together with you. And now, here's your host.
Friday, March 31st, 2020 was the last time children in the Bahamas actually sat in a physical classroom. When they left school that Friday afternoon, none of them imagined it would be the last time that they would see their friends in person, sit at their desks, copy notes from a board, and roam the playground or their campus. On Monday, March 16th, 2020, a transition from face-to-face learning to remote learning shifted our education system as we once knew it, and children, parents, teachers, and administrators had to make drastic adjustments to accommodate learning in light of the COVID-19 environment we found ourselves in. Some 5 months later, and education delivery hangs in the balance. Some schools have announced their plans to provide face-to-face learning, online learning, and a hybrid option. For many parents, they're not comfortable sending their children to school. Many can no longer afford tuition, and some are simply seeking an alternative and trying to figure out what is best for their families. Many parents struggled to assume the role of teacher and found the responsibility of overseeing online learning challenging and at times stressful. Today's show will explore the dynamics of online, virtual, and remote learning in a post-COVID-19 environment. My guest today is an education technology expert, and as an educator and parent, she understands this more than many. Zina Dean, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Well, when we started this, we didn't know what was happening, how long it would last, and many of us were in a frenzy. Parents, teachers, administrators, everybody. This was just unknown territory for us. And some schools were calling it online learning. Some schools were calling it virtual learning. Some schools were calling it remote emergency learning. Explain those different terms for us so that the listening audience has an understanding and can know what direction things may be going in when school resumes.
Okay, when we speak about online learning has been around for a while. Some schools are totally virtual in the sense that all they do is provide an online platform for students to be able to access their assignments, communicate with their teachers. It may be in the form of instant messaging, video calling, seeing their grades. So that format of learning, online learning, has always been around. So I don't want to say there's anything super special about it, but I think for us in this part of the world, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to revert to using an online learning platform in particular, okay? When I think about remote learning, I think sometimes we get those terms confused because when you really truly think about remote learning, you're thinking about students who may be far away from their home base of school, so they may be thousands of miles away from home. So I wouldn't necessarily refer to, a child being at home and being able to have an online lesson, a live video call with their teacher as remote learning. That would just be video conferencing. So when we talk about online learning now, online learning has been around for a while, and it's just a different modality of learning. It's just a different platform for learning. So now when coming into this, I guess, the second phase of school closure, and we're still in the COVID-19 pandemic, you find now schools have to face the hard task of either choosing between face-to-face learning, like totally face-to-face learning, which is the traditional mode of learning, or going totally onto an online learning platform. So it's doing some sort of distance learning. So I wouldn't necessarily call it, when I think about remote learning and just in my area of expertise, I think about like thousands of miles separating you from your teacher, right? And in this case, like say for instance, how we're in New Providence, you know, your teacher coincidentally may live right around the corner from you, which may be less than a mile. So it's not really remote. All right. So if I explain that well enough.
Yeah, so let's talk about ICT, which is Information Communication Technology. What role does ICT or technology play? For those not familiar with that term, what role does that play in education, and how will we see that being utilized even more in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead? Because I think we've taken long to embrace it.
Mhm. I would agree. I think in our region, we have taken a long time to embrace different forms of educational technology as a constant. So I would say as a constant in the school environment. So having it, so educational technology is kind of like, you know, forced its way in the door now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the crisis has brought about some positive changes in the way in which we approach different modes of learning, in the way in which we deliver learning. So now, in just referring back to ICT has become more like a digital literacy. So it's a literacy, it's a language that students have to learn. Like they have no choice but to become digitally literate, to understand different technology terms, to understand how to apply technology. So I think the main thing with technology now is being able to apply it because it has so many applications it can be applied to every different subject area. And technology helps students to make the connections between the real world and the various subject areas that they have. And it's a skill that employers are going to require, or even if you decide to work for yourself as an entrepreneur, you have to be technology literate in order for you to survive and even thrive in this world.
You said it yourself that COVID-19, that this pandemic has brought about positive change. What are those positive changes that you refer to based on your expertise and where you sit as an educator and even as a parent?
Okay, some of the positive changes I've seen in the educational environment are in terms of one would be collaboration. So I think it is kind of like encourage our students, teachers, and parents to have to collaborate more in terms of idea sharing. I think that's one of the most important things, idea sharing and problem solving. So ICT really helps in providing the environment for that. It calls for you to problem solve, it calls for you to work together because you're using the technology to help so many different stakeholders. All right. The next thing I think that it forced was, especially for our students, was a greater level of independence and ownership on their own learning. Because in the online environment now, students have to log in with say for instance, they have an individualized account. They have to keep track of tasks, and this may be, you know, through a calendar, through a learning management system that may send them notifications about this assignment being due, that assignment being due, you know, and everything is attached to their profile, not mommy and daddy's profile. So it causes a different sense of ownership for the student, and it puts more of the responsibility in the student's hands. Because even when I reflect back on the first time school closed, I had some students who were very, in the regular face-to-face classroom, they were easily distracted, you know, very talkative, couldn't stay on task. But when we went to online learning, like this was a totally different child. Like I saw a totally different child, and it was amazing because it forced them to be by themselves and to take ownership of themselves. Because when you're online, you don't have that distraction because you're seeing your classmates. It's not like your classmate is on the side of you and you have somebody to talk to. Like I can't talk to you on the side, like if I'm looking at you through through my camera or whatever it is on my screen. I can't look and talk to you and say, hey, buddy, you know. So I think it caused more ownership, and it placed the child in charge of their learning. And then for the educator, I think it really encouraged us to take up learning as a part of our, how can I say it? It encouraged us to be, let's say, lifelong learners, like to have a desire to learn more things in relation to technology, because some person's skill set, like, you know, it was challenged, you know, and technology brings up those inadequacies as well if you're not competent in certain things. So it forced a lot of educators to, you know, study different things, enroll themselves in courses or online workshops. So you have a lot of online learning, and I think online learning like really picked up with people trying to enroll in different courses, trying to enter into free webinars and things of that nature. So it kind of like promoted learning culture. Okay.
There. So you were talking about some of the positive things that came out of COVID, how people are embracing learning and everybody was enrolled in an online course. And I'm guilty of it because I enrolled in a few online courses myself. And you also spoke about students taking ownership of their learning and that learning process, and some students not being as easily distracted as they typically would have been. What does this mean, and what considerations do teachers and parents need to take into consideration for children with different learning styles? Because for some students, they're going to struggle with online learning, and this isn't going to be as easy for some as it is for others, and then for others, it's going to be a breeze. How do we help as educators? How do you help and encourage parents who may find themselves challenged and their children challenged by this new modality?
Okay, that's a good question. I think it's important. Partnership in education is critical. So when you talk about administration, teachers, parents, students, everybody has to work together for the collective good of the student and just for the school itself. So I would say those schools that do have like guidance counselors on staff, I feel like their role is also very critical during this time of the transition from face-to-face to online learning. So even in that, the school can provide different resources to parents and to students in terms of organizational skills, like tips on organizational skills, how to not be fearful of being in the online environment, balancing. So just as how we would have taught students these skills in face-to-face now, there are some slight variations when we talk about the online environment. So even as an educator with going into the online environment and my first time having a live lesson, which would be in the form of a video call with my students, I would have to take the time out to set expectations for how the digital environment is going to work. I'm working collaboratively with them to find out how they can take ownership inside the digital environment. How can they respond as digital citizens or show that they're being good digital citizens? That's one part of it. And then also too, depending on my subject area as well, I would have to reinforce those skills in terms of, okay, how do you organize your work online for this particular subject? So all of these things have variations. So I think with the constant reinforcement from adults and that, you know, and that help, and then you're able to kind of identify those students who may be struggling a little bit more. So you know that they may need a little bit more intervention outside of the class time. So that collaborative partnership is very important.
What are some of the realistic expectations that parents should have of teachers and students in an online learning environment? Because some people are going to expect what happened in a traditional classroom to just automatically translate into the online environment, and that's not necessarily the case. So for that parent that's out there that thought that, you know, that period of March to June may have been very frustrating and it wasn't what they expected and they were stressed and didn't know how to cope, and, you know, all these other factors would have contributed as well, because we were just navigating so many unknowns at that particular time. What are some of the realistic expectations that parents should have in this new online environment?
Okay, I think when we talk about online learning in a normal environment, um, versus online learning in a crisis situation, like we're going through a pandemic, I think a little bit more grace and a little bit more flexibility on both parts, parents and institutions, has to come into play. Because even in our country, when we look at what has happened and what has been happening with the pandemic, there was a certain point where we were on lockdowns, all the time, and every week or so, every couple of weeks, things were changing. So because you don't have that constant framework in place in terms of building habits, and you'd be surprised you built so much new habits during this couple month period and you don't realize it. So it's hard for you to get in a routine. And I say that to say this: children thrive off of routine. So because of the pandemic now, routine has kind of like been broken and they have to establish new routines one after the other. So I think parents have to be understanding with schools as well, because this is a new form of learning that a lot of schools are just embracing. Yes, they would have had an opportunity to go through a few couple of months of doing some things, and some schools may still be struggling because this is a learning curve. Like opening up schools, this is the first time in our nation's history where most schools are going to have to open virtually. So parents should expect that, hey, sometimes things are not going to go perfectly because we're dealing with technology. Number one, all right. The next thing is we have to be understanding with our teachers as well, because a lot of them have families, a lot of them have children, and everybody may be home. So sometimes little Johnny may run in front of the video call when his mommy is on, and we have to be understanding, towards that. But I think schools should have done a little bit of legwork over the summertime and even towards the last part of the school year ending. That would have been the 2019-2020 school year, to see what realistic changes they could, make going into September and what really looks realistic. So I think everybody just needs to have an open mind and be flexible, because change will happen constantly in this crisis environment. So I think that's one of the key things to us having a successful online learning environment.
You indicated that some schools should have already done the groundwork, and that they should really be, they should have used the summer months to really prepare, given the uncertainty of all that was happening. Um, we know that in the Bahamas, not all schools, I mean, and this is globally, this is a universal concept. Not all schools are created equal. We have some schools
Right.
that have more resources than others, some schools that are more um, forward thinking and progressive than others. So there are a whole number of variables and factors that will contribute to what an online platform looks like in one school versus another.
Right.
What does that mean for children in the Bahamas? Is that going to widen that disparity between the haves and the have-nots? And is it going to level the playing field now? What are your thoughts in that regard?
I think I would say this: if you don't have a sensible learning management platform as a school, especially if you have to go totally virtual, it doesn't mean that learning has to stop, but I think it makes the process more taxing on everybody's part. So, on the part of the parent, who may have to check a million emails because that's the way in which the work is being sent, or maybe sent over social media via WhatsApp. It makes things stressful on the part of the child too, with having to try to be organized because the work is all over the place in all different digital locations. And then for the teacher as well, it's added stress because you have so many emails coming into your inbox because this is your only place of actually collecting the work. So it makes it hard to keep track of just the administrative part of doing the learning. So I think it's important that schools invest in the proper technology, and you have technology out there, like G Suite for Education. Once you're a certified school, it's free. The platform is free, and students are able to get access to a Google account, but it's a school managed account, and they have access to all kind of free apps, email, a learning management system. So there are options out there that schools can use that are free, but it's just a matter of planning and executing it to make it look like a success. So and that's just one aspect of it. Now we have to also look at the fact that all students may not have access to the physical technology in order for them to even access the software. So, just having the infrastructure in place in your house, having electricity, having running water, all these things, they make a difference. Not having a device, all right. So the playing field can't be leveled in that respect. So there's much work that still needs to happen in our country in terms of what we call digital equity, making sure technology is accessible for all children, no matter their socioeconomic status.
Well, that concludes our first segment. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the things. I want you to give parents some tips as to where children should be with their, what you termed as digital literacy. We're going to take our first break here on University Drive. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
To protect yourself and others from COVID-19, stay home as much as possible and avoid close contact with others. Wear a mask that covers your nose and mouth when you leave home. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Practice social distancing. If you must leave home, stay at least 6 feet away from other people and disinfect items you must touch. Limit in-person contact as much as possible. To prevent the spread of COVID-19 if you're sick, avoid public transportation, ride-sharing, or taxis. Stay home if you're sick, except to get medical care. Remember to call ahead first. Separate yourself from other people and pets in your home. Everyone is at risk of getting COVID-19. Older adults and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions may be at higher risk for more severe illness. This message is brought to you by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and University of the Bahamas.
Welcome back to University Drive. I'm your host, Nikki Bowen. If you're just joining my show, our guest today is Zena Dean, an education technology expert. And we're talking about delivering education and the teaching and learning models of the post-COVID-19 reality. Before the break, the last word she spoke about was digital equity and making sure that all students have access to technology. And we know that sounds good, but it's not necessarily our reality because we've lagged in embracing technology and learning. And for many years, we've been busy buying textbooks every September as opposed to investing in a computer or a device. So many parents are out there, Zena, and they're trying to figure out, what device do I need for my child? Is it a tablet? Is it a laptop? Is it a desktop? What are some of the specifications that I'm looking for that parent that's kind of stuck? Some schools may have issued suggestions and others, they may not have the resources. They may not have that know-how, that tech-savvy person to say, okay, these are the things that are best suited. These are the devices that are best suited for online learning. Because most children have a tablet, an iPad, or another device. That may not necessarily work. What are the devices? What device would be the best recommendations for parents?
Okay. Just in reference to devices, I would always say if your school has mandated or recommended particular devices for certain grade levels, I would say that to go with that first. If you're unsure, you can talk whoever it is in the tech department. But I would say this, in order for, when we look at the little babies, okay, and that would be preschool age children, all right, depending on, you have to look at what are they being required to do. If online, if they're only being required to join a video call meeting or go to one or two websites where they do their work, they don't really have to use any type of office programs or robust programs. A sensible tablet may be sufficient for them. So there are a lot on the market, even with Samsung and the iPad. So you want to make sure that your child has a working camera, that where they can be able to be seen, and also have a working monitor or screen on their tablet as well. That where they can see their teachers, see their classmates. The microphone is working. If you're using Bluetooth devices or whatnot. For the little ones, I really like them to be able to plug in things so they understand how to take care of certain things as well. So a lot of devices which have that plug and play functionality, you don't necessarily have to worry about charging. So that's another thing too. So unless you're going to impress upon your child the importance of, being able to charge a headphone, a pair of headphones, a microphone or whatever it is, I would kind of like stray away from those Bluetooth devices for the younger years. Now, when we get to primary level, I think the work changes a little bit. The workload changes and increases. So I would say to invest in a sensible laptop that has at least 128 gigabyte hard drive, right? Or you can go up to 200 and something. So you have to look at what it is that the school is requiring for the students to do. But having access to robust programs, because they may need to produce a presentation, they may need to type up something, they may need to create a brochure, they may need to download pictures. So you want to make sure that they have a sensible laptop that they can use. I don't think unless it's a really, really robust tablet, like when we talk about the iPad Pro or we talk about the Microsoft Surface, those types of tablet devices, they may be sufficient for what the primary student has, but if you invest in a sensible laptop, it can last a child for a couple of years. And especially if it's a MacBook, if you have the money to do it, it can last for almost the child's entire time in primary school. And then when we talk about the high school students, definitely you want to get a decent laptop. If you invest in something sensible and reliable, I've had my share of laptops over the years, Dell, HP, Samsung, Sony, and recently, a few years ago, probably about 6 years ago, I started using Apple products, and I swear by them. I've had my MacBook Air now for 6 years, and I've never, ever had a problem. I never had to carry it to a technician for it to get fixed. So you have to look at the type of device and the value for money. But yes, you have to stay within your budget as well. But if you buy something decent for your child, then you don't have to worry about it for a very long time. So those are my recommendations.
You spoke about something very interesting, and you spoke about what the possibilities are for that preschooler and what are some of the things that they will be doing. And for them, their lessons may not be as structured. They may have things.
Right.
Of course, you can't expect a preschooler to be having the same rigidity as a primary school student, and the same for high school. So when we talk about digital literacy, what are some of the computer skills and digital skills that that child that is in the kindergarten level, let's just say ages 3 to 5, what are some of the skills that they should have? And I'm going to go through different grade levels so that
Okay.
they have an understanding of what to expect.
Okay. All right, definitely. So some things that you can possibly work on with your child at home, especially for a preschooler, is being able to, let's look first at device safety, being safe online, taking care of devices, knowing not to, bring it near water, things of that nature, knowing what to plug in or push into, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, knowing how to care for something. So just like how we teach children to care for other things, we have to teach them how to care for technology as well. And then I think one of the important skills too is children need to be familiar with a keyboard. So it doesn't matter if it's a desktop, laptop, tablet, children need to be familiar with a keyboard. So say for instance at that age level as well, students are learning about their letters, they're learning to make words, they're learning to write simple sentences. So it's a wonderful way too of encouraging to making the connection as well. So, having children to go and type out their names, look for letters, or there are a bunch of free websites out there that kids can use to practice typing skills because, they will need to develop those in order for them to move at a productive pace for school. And then we talk about internet safety, being safe online. So it's important you talk to your younger children about being safe online and only going to websites that you approve. All right. There are different, I know like with Google, you can lock down your device for your child and, they can only install certain apps and things of that nature. But I think it's responsible to, you have to be responsible and teach your child about being safe on the internet. Don't talk to people you're not supposed to talk to. Don't engage in any live video calls with persons. If you feel uncomfortable as a child, you need to be able to express that to a parent. So internet safety is key. And then knowing how to navigate the internet as well. Kids need to know about their browser buttons. Knowing how to go forward and backwards and refreshing a page on a website. These small little things. Learning about passwords. These are some of the things we teach in school. Creating a sensible password. You'll find a lot of kids, they would use common or familiar things as their password, their name, their telephone number, their date of birth, little things. And then also to the student being able to master whatever platform it is that the teacher or the school may be using for that particular age level. That is important for them to know how to get on properly, log on properly, log off properly, and all these things take time, especially with the younger ones. So they can practice these things forever, but practice with the computer makes perfect. So I would say some of those things, and yeah, I think I talked about digital citizenship, being a good digital citizen. So those are just some of the basic things with that age group.
So, that's a lot for kindergarten level. I mean, I'm scared to ask for the other grade levels. But what are some of the...
It sounds like a lot, but you'll be surprised what you would cover. I mean, even as a teacher, what you would cover in a year with students. And for that age group too, it's a lot more hands-on with things. So, they have to interact with, you may use interactive activities. They watch videos. There's so many videos out there now, from a lot of websites like Common Sense Media. I would advise parents to go on there and sign up for a parent account. It's a wonderful website that has a lot of resources for parents, especially if they want reviews on apps, on movies, on music, anything dealing with educational stuff, anything dealing with technology. And they even provide helpful guides with teaching your children about being a good digital citizen. So that's a good website that, and they have a lot of videos, a lot of kid appropriate videos that teach a lot of those basic concepts.
Repeat that website, because I know someone's going to track me down and say, I listened to your show and I didn't get the name of the website. Repeat that.
I think it's called Common Sense Media. I think the exact address is commonsensemedia.org. I know they also have a free app as well. And on the app, kids can play games, watch videos. A lot of their videos are on YouTube on different digital citizenship topics. So, being safe online, privacy, protecting your password, watching how you interact with others, cyberbullying, not being a bully, topics of that nature.
Sounds good. So what are the computer skills or the digital literacy skills that primary school students need to have? I don't know if you want to break it up grades 1 to 3 and then 4 to 6, or if you can all chunk it together, but I'm going to leave that to you because you gave us a mouthful for the kindergarten level. I'm scared here.
I think at that, when we talk about, so a lot of those skills that I talked about are universal for like all of our students. But when we speak about, let me look at grades 1, so not grades 1, like grades 3 and up, grades 3 to 6. It's important now that our children are able to transfer different technology skills. So it's important that, okay, skills that they may use on a desktop computer, they can be flexible enough and they know how to operate a laptop computer, or they can maneuver from one type of program to another variation of that program and not feel puzzled or not feel fearful, and understand that, okay, there may be different types of products, but a lot of them do the same things. So our kids being able to be flexible and to apply themselves in different types of technology environments is important. Okay. Again, knowing the computer terms, because you would find kids, they make up names for everything. So knowing important terminology and how to use it, knowing how to type is fundamental. Knowing the different keys on your keyboard and what they do. There are different categories of keys on your keyboard. Certain adults didn't know that. So being familiar with the different, you have your alphabetical keys, you have your special keys like your enter and your backspace. Like a lot of times we take these things for granted that children actually know what some of these things are. And if you don't, sometimes it really sets you back. For the child in primary school as well, being able to maneuver through a word processing program, because they would have to create different things, knowing how to insert a picture, knowing how to format a page, change the color, change the font. If your child can do these different things, knowing how to print, that's a skill as well. Knowing where to go to print, knowing how to change the page size, knowing how to create a presentation. So you find now, okay, kids have to do a lot of presentations. So how can you create a slideshow? Can you run a slide? Can you run a slideshow? Knowing about computing history. Sometimes the children laugh when I when I tell them when I was in high school we didn't have Wi-Fi. So they asked me, how did you survive? I said, well, we didn't have it, so we didn't know what we were missing, what we were missing out on.
Pick up from there. So kids being able to transfer what they use on a laptop, desktop, tablet, that kind of thing. Let's continue.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge skill for students, because you can't just be digitally literate on one device anymore, especially as our world is changing and you may only have access to doing certain things on a particular device. So, are you able to send a file from your phone? Are you able to share a file from your phone? Are you able to download pictures? Are you able to edit things on your phone? Can you do the same thing on your tablet? Can you transfer things from your phone to your tablet, to your desktop or laptop? Like all of these are like real world skills that students need to know. Can you conduct a video call? Can you invite people to a video call? Can you monitor the chat? Can you share documents in a video call? Can you share your screen? Can you download software that you may need for your computer? All right, so all of these things are being required of our children now, especially how they have to participate in online learning. They may need an extension to, use a particular app, or they may have to download an app from the web or download an app from the tablet. So how much independence can we empower our children with? So their parents don't have to do too many things, too many basic things for them. So I think those skills are very important for our children to be able to have.
Zena, the reality of it is too, we don't know what we don't know until we have to figure it out. So there are a lot of parents as well that are not savvy with these things because they go to work and their work requires them to use certain programs, and anything outside
Right.
of that, they're not savvy with. So they too become frustrated. Um, they may not have to do certain things, and depending on the industry that you're in, that program,
Mm-hmm.
that software has pretty much everything that you need. And a lot of times it's not transferable skills like you're talking about. Um,
Right.
and so we as adults also need to be able to adapt and to learn. And for many adults,
That's
this is
true.
going to be a learning curve as well, because we're not as tech savvy as we think we are, because we just use what we're comfortable with using. We know how to
That's
log into
true.
Facebook, and a lot of these programs, productivity based programs, we're not familiar with because we don't typically use them.
Right.
I'll be the first to admit, my sister runs circles around me when it comes to
Mm.
Excel, because she's in that industry where she works with spreadsheets all day. I've learned a
Right.
whole lot from her. Now, when it comes to a Word document, I could manipulate, I could do anything in Word. My sister be like, how you do that? Because that's what I'm familiar with. She's like, I didn't know you
Yeah.
could do that. I said, I didn't know you could do that in Excel. So let's now transition to that high school student. What are the things that high school students need to know? What are their computer skills? Because you've mentioned a whole lot at the kindergarten level. You've mentioned a lot at
Mm-hmm.
the primary school level. I'm almost afraid to ask what high schoolers and college students should be doing.
It's all about building. The high schooler should be able to build upon the foundational skills gained in elementary school, and even in my experience as a lecturer as well, you find a lot of like certain a certain like digital skill set you would expect students to have. Sometimes you have to go over inside the university level classroom. So even in terms of, okay, properly formatting your paper, properly formatting a research paper, or properly formatting a college-based assignment, you may still have to give guidance as a lecturer. Okay, this is what I want in your header. Okay, you should have a header and a footer inside your document. You should have these number of sentences in your paragraph. So you still find yourself going over some basic skills. When I see a slideshow that you present to me, there's a certain format I want to see. I shouldn't have to see itty bitty words on the slide and I can't, read them. I shouldn't see a whole bunch of words on the slide. Your colors should be, balancing out with each other. I shouldn't see busy pictures. So there's a certain skill set you expect students to come to college with. So you don't have to be like reteaching these skills. You should be able to at that stage work collaboratively online. That is a big thing now. Students having the skill set to work collaboratively online without having the real face-to-face interaction. So being able to work simultaneously on a document with someone, being able to work simultaneously on a presentation with somebody, being able to edit together. Communication skills, communication and technology go hand in hand. So what communication tools can the high schooler use to interact with his or her teacher or interact with his or her peers? A lot of educational products offer instant messaging. They offer the video chat as well feature. They offer commenting online, commenting on different documents in real time, so the next person can reply to your post. Being a digital citizen also is a big thing for teenagers as well, because a lot of them make poor choices online and they don't realize that their digital footprint goes with them everywhere they go. So that inappropriate post or that inappropriate picture, even though they may delete it, it's still living online. And employers look at these things. Sometimes the first thing an employer does is you send in a resume, they will go and, Google search you and see what comes up. So teaching our students how to make sensible decisions online, watching what they say, watching what they post, these are important skills, because some of the decisions you make in your younger years, may be detrimental to you in the future in terms of you getting into the school that you want or getting the scholarship that you want. So these things are important. And just being able to collaborate, like I think that is the main thing now, being able to collaborate and working online. There's some of the key skills for our kids now, being able to, just collaborate and work online, function inside a digital world.
One more thing I want to talk about, because we're almost out of time. I don't know where the time
Okay.
went so quickly, but a lot of parents don't understand the infrastructure that's needed. I mean, we've seen, a whole lot of complaints recently because so many people are
Right.
home, so many people are on their devices. And sometimes parents don't understand the infrastructure that's needed to support these kinds of systems. What are some of the things that parents also need to be mindful of in terms of that support, and what happens if your power goes out, you can't access the internet? How do we maneuver and adjust and adapt to all of these things, all of these uncertainties and unknowns that can happen as we try to create that routine that you talked about in some semblance of normalcy?
Okay. All right. When we talk about infrastructure, and especially, I look at the school standpoint, I look at the home standpoint. As we return to the virtual environment as well, and I know these are financially challenging times, but if you know that you have a few children in your household that may be online simultaneously doing video calls, you're gonna have to, you may have to upgrade your bandwidth that you have with whatever your internet service, whoever your internet service provider is, having sensible devices for the children to be able to go on as well. All right. And then too, if they're in different locations in the house, maybe it is that you're gonna have some type of wireless router, or you may have like an amplifier in your house to like blast out the internet signal or to make it stronger in order for everybody to be working online. Even for children to have a space where they know, okay, this is my little workspace, even though it may be 2 feet away from my sister's workspace. Okay, this is my workspace where I have all of my technology supplies and everything that I need there. And then if you know that the particular area that you live in, there's a bigger issue that you can't really solve in terms of, okay, your internet connection is weak all the time. It may be something that you don't really have any control over, or you may have frequent power outages. I think that that's something that you need to communicate to your child's teacher, your child's school, way in advance so that they can work with you. And then, you will just be able to say, okay, well, since the work is posted online, okay, Johnny will be able to do the work at home, when we have a connection, or I'll make sure it gets done by XY date. So I think schools will be flexible in that vein. All right. And then when we talk about the schools, because the school is seen as a business with internet service providers, a school's internet bill could be in the thousands every month. And I think parents also need to bear that in mind. So when we talk about students bringing their own devices on campus, that could turn into something very costly for the school, especially if you have a lot of students. So certain things the school may have to put in place. They may have to have a mobile device management program where even though you maybe bring your own device to school, you may have to have it registered on the network, so students can have access, because you may not be able to just have an open network for everybody to have access to the internet, because that's going to take up bandwidth as well. And then you speak to the students about, okay, how are we supposed to be acting when we come on the school campus in terms of what are we doing online? When we have a break, are we streaming Netflix movies or TV shows or different series? Are we going on YouTube? Because all these things take a bandwidth, especially in the event of students wanting to complete work, or download a video, something related to education. So schools have to speak to children about what the digital expectations are at school versus what the digital expectations are at home. And then schools will also have to invest in infrastructure as well. So putting up access points around the campus in order for students and teachers, administrators to be able to access the internet as well. And then also having contingency plans when the internet goes out, or when the power goes out, because that changes the dynamics with learning as well. So those are just a few tips.
They were some good tips. I'm learning a lot too. Thank you. I mean, this show was super beneficial for me as a parent, as well as we move into navigating this online learning environment.
That's
I'm going to
awesome.
conclude with this. Well, actually, I think I may have two. But given the young collegiate of our country. We should have
Mm-hmm.
embraced technology and learning a long time ago. A child in Inagua should be able to enroll in a physics lesson taught by a teacher in New Providence or Grand Bahama. I
Right.
started teaching in 2003, and every September, without fail, I would be told not to decorate my classroom because of the threat of a hurricane and my classroom was always used as a shelter. We're almost
Wow.
20 years away from that time, and we're still battling with hurricanes. And just
Mm.
about every September, schools close and students are out of school for a long time. And when we consider the latest hurricane, Dorian, students in Grand Bahama and Abaco were out of school for an entire semester.
Mm.
Why has it taken us as a country so long to integrate technology in education? And why did we have to be forced by COVID-19 to make this adjustment?
Mm. I think for us, as a nation, we are, and I guess it's something with people as well. We're comfortable in doing things a certain way. And I feel for the most part with education, we were very traditional in terms of our approaches towards learning. And, technology actually tests the framework or challenges the framework of any type of system. All right. And technology kind of forces change. And for a lot of us, change is hard. We see change as being fearful when change can really be a positive thing. And sometimes, with newer ideas coming on stream, that may call for other persons having to come in the forefront to assist with the leading of the idea. Um, so it calls for technology challenges culture, the status quo, it challenges the culture of companies, organizations, and it also calls for collaboration across organizations. And really and truly, the strongest person actually survives in this type of environment. So you have to be able to pull on your strong people, the people who are technology literate, to help you with, guiding the framework, creating the framework, and even implementing it and executing it. If we really want to see real progress and real change um, in our country as a whole, because our kids need to be able to compete with persons from all around the world, and we don't want to place our kids at an advantage, because we dropped the ball on certain things. So I'm hoping that because of the pandemic, we see a lot of positive changes, especially in terms of education and how we use technology, and that there's more of a focus on utilizing technology effectively in education.
I want to end by asking, where do we go from here? And in your opinion, what will schools look like in the next year, 5 years, and even a decade from now as we integrate technology into the learning process here in our country?
Well, I think what's important when we look at bringing everybody up to speed is one of the points that I mentioned before, which is digital equity. So making sure the poorest of students in our country have access to the infrastructure, whether it's in their house, whether it's in their neighborhood, have access to the hardware and the software that they need to actually be a successful student. Because you would find for a lot of students, like when they come to school face to face, that is basically their normal, like one of the only normal environments that they're in. And when they come to school, they may have all the resources that they need in that environment. But then when they have to transition home now, it's a different playing field. And the playing field isn't even. So I think as a nation, we have to look at ways in which government and private organizations can partner to really help those that are disadvantaged. So yeah, and being able to provide some sort of free resources or really discounted resources in relation to technology. All right, because if we don't fix those problems at the bottom, we will never be able to catch up, with our counterparts in the United States, or when we look at China or Japan in terms of how they're using technology or even creating technology. And then 2 platforms need to be provided, or, small business grants need to be provided for technology-based companies that really want to empower, it may be children, it may be adults, with technology resources, with technology devices. But I see as we go forward, especially 10 years from now, I feel that schools should look a little bit different, and schools should be able to relay or provide an environment to facilitate those real world skills that students are going to need, because more and more people have the ability to work from home. So when we talk about new ideas for new infrastructure, software, programming, even when we look at children in terms of careers, so if schools can offer different platforms to develop these skills, so even providing courses that may not be traditionally involved in a regular school system. So having programming courses, having 3D printing courses, having augmented reality, looking at the future trends in technology and trying to put those into courses or even extracurricular activities to innovate our students and to get their minds thinking about ways in which they can improve the world and even change our country through technology.
Well, that concludes this episode of University Drive. This show has been very thought-provoking. Our guest today has given us much to think about what the road ahead has in store as it relates to COVID-19. I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion today. Thank you once again. And thank you to my listening audience. Be sure to visit our website at www.movie.bs for all the episodes of University Drive. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And be sure to join us next week. Same time, same radio station for another episode of University Drive. I'm your host, Nikki Bo. Enjoy the remainder of your day.
University Drive is a production of the Office of University Relations and the Communications and Creative Arts Academic Unit at University of the Bahamas. All rights reserved.